right, man. I'm honored to be here. F*** you. Year one, yo.
Year one. This is a year one podcast. Stop. This is a year one podcast.
Right into it.
I brought my best friend, freshman year roommate, Under Armour All-American teammate, and now, long term, whatever, best friend, Brandon Wimbush on here. We don't care about his Notre Dame, history, but I brought him on just because I wanted to bring someone on who's been here with me. I feel like during this journey, who I've talked to about, Varsity House, and my lifestyle, my livelihood, and everything else. So he's the one who knows me best. I'm excited for this episode. I'm excited to get to a year. Let's rock. Let's get one more pop. Let's clap it up. We're at a year now.
Champs or
We're at a year now, but I mean, it's been a journey. It's been a long one, but again, I appreciate you, Brandon, for stepping in and doing this for me and interviewing me on this one.
Yeah, man, honored to be here. I think you've done a phenomenal job of growing your platform, making that transition. Not a pun, but making the pivot, right, from ball and having that be your life to, don't want to so much call this corporate, right, because you're not corporate, but life outside of ball, right, finding out what you're passionate about. You've taken the time, you've invested. We call it bootstrapping here in the startup world. You've invested your own capital, effort, time, sweat, and equity into building Varsity House Podcast into what it is today. So kudos to you, man. And honored again to be here having this conversation with you as one of your bestest friends and bringing Varsity House Podcast, to the greater world. Because you have some important lessons, right? And I think starting off, what people would want to know is like, what incentivized you? Not what incentivized you, but like what made you want to get into podcasting, right? And then kind of going in the direction that you've gone in as far as keeping it within sport.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things was I wanted to stay because, after football, it was like, dang, like I've played sports my entire life. I had no idea what I wanted to do. I didn't want to go into the corporate world. And if I did, it was going to be, maybe working for some type of sports company, some sports network, something that whatever I did had to, involve sports. And so I feel like I've always been someone who's, done their own thing as far as like, I guess, business, but as far as just like wanting to, have ideas and be creative and just to chase those and go after those. And so obviously during COVID, that was my last season. And, when it started in March. So like from March to July, basically, like the only thing that was like live and new were podcasts. It was I Am Athlete was a big one. Nelk was a big one. Drink Champs, all those were big podcasts where it's like, that's something that's all I watched. That's all I looked at. And so I was like, when it came around like 2 years later and I was figuring out what I wanted to do, I just knew I had a good network to where I couldn't get the Kevin Hart's, to start off. I couldn't get the Mike Tyson's or Shaq's or whatever to start off. But I was like, I could get some people that's like pretty close to it, or people who are very, well respected and valued and, sought after in their field. So it may be, a coach, it may be a college coach. It may be a mayor. It may be, a gymnast from, LSU. It may be a college football player. It may be something like that to where it's like they may not have the, tens of millions of followers on Instagram or whatever and be that, worldwide celebrity, but in their own circle, in their own bubble, they're a celebrity. And so that's kind of, I put my head down and then I just went after it.
I think you've done a phenomenal job. One, of leveraging your network. You just seem more willing to ask people for favors than I am. And, it's a skill to have. You need to be humbled, right? I think we've always been on the other side of the coin of being asked for certain favors and certain things, but you've done a good job of going out and getting what you want. And it's been a big part of the success of the podcast. So kudos to you. We'd love to hear more about that part of it for you.
You're just gonna make me cry on this episode, but I appreciate you. All right.
I guess going off that point, who was your first guest, right? And why did it make sense for you to have that individual on as number one?
Because for me, I feel like everything that I've always done, I feel like I've done to the highest level. And that kind of just may be on accident, or it just may be something that, I'm used to, that I've become accustomed to where it's like, I feel like as competitors and like as Division I athletes, like we've probably never done something to like the lowest degree, I guess. Whether
it's excellence.
Exactly. And so I just felt like a pride thing, an ego thing was like, I need views. Like if I do my first episode and I get 5-10 views, I'm done. Like I won't even make it to LSU to have Coach Kelly on. Like I would stop. And so that was like my mindset to where it was like, if I do Coach Freeman, Notre Dame fans are going to listen, because this is the first interview or first podcast that he's done since being addressed as the head coach of Notre Dame. So I was like Notre Dame fans are going to listen. Like my friends, might listen or whatever. And then I had Avery on, so his friends, family will listen, and Myra and his friends, family will listen as well. And that was like one of my things was like I wanted to attack a university because millions of fans, whether it's, alum, whether it's boosters, whether it's, fans, whether it's team, like players on the team, whatever, operations, whatever. There are so many people that associate with a university and like, Notre Dame football, that I'll get views. And so we ended up getting 3,500 views on our very first YouTube video. And I was like, when I first looked at it, I was like, man, that's not a lot, because I'm comparing it to like the Pivot. I'm comparing it to iMath. I'm comparing it to everything. And like at that point, we had like 5 subscribers. So to get like 3,500 views and like with, our very first episode, I was like, all right, I like this. Like, let's keep going. Mm-hmm. And then Coach Lee, I figured the same thing. He's just leaving I think it was his first year at Vanderbilt, or maybe second year at Vanderbilt, I believe. And then he's coming from Notre Dame, so Notre Dame fans are going to check in. Vanderbilt fans are going to check in. And so I feel like I had 2 audiences there that were going to tune in. And then obviously, some of his players, some of his family operations at, Vandy, Notre Dame. So all that, I feel like all that was going to tune in. And then the big one, Coach Kelly, to where it's like you may get the national media to tune in, but you guarantee you're going to get Notre Dame fans, going to get Notre Dame audience, and you're going to get the LSU audience, and you're going to get the LSU fans, because that was his first podcast since being at LSU. So I was like, I got three haymakers. Like I got 3 heavy hitters. And so, and they were like that Brian Kelly episode ended up doing like 13,000 views. And
he said his favorite rapper was.
But I mean, I don't really know why. But at the end of the day, it's just like the thing that I've learned with podcasting is just like if you could be the first to get the information, or if you could just learn from someone else. And so he had just did an article, or he had just did an interview with someone, and it was like a written article, and he was talking about like the pros and cons of Notre Dame, basically like kind of why he left. And I kind of just, took some of that to where it's like, and that was like good timing, because like fans from Notre Dame were mad that he was like kind of dogging Notre Dame's like training staff and parking, like little stuff like that. So I went down there and he was like, yo, you want to shoot it? He asked me if I wanted to shoot it in the new, what's the cafeteria? And I was like, because he just kind of wanted to show the cafeteria, because we didn't have a cafeteria at Notre Dame and everything. So he kind of wanted to be a little bit petty, but we ended up not doing it. But we talked about it, and I talked about why he went to the SEC. He said he wanted to be Nick Saban. That ended up blowing up. He talked about Young Boy and Lil Wayne. That blew up. But then he also talked about like his love for Notre Dame and the players and things like that. So I thought it was well received from both audiences. But that was just like my mindset behind it. So I was like, if I do these 3, like it's not just something like my friends or people who follow me or whatever are gonna be like, oh, he's just trying something. I feel like if I did those 3, they were like, oh, like this is something worth subscribing to. This is something worth following. And then that was kind of the mindset behind like why we like how we get started, and it's really been like that ever since. Like you look at, because then I did the Michigan one with you. We had some good guys on there: Ronnie Bell, R.J. Mullen, Caden Colasar. That was following a year that they went to the playoffs, and obviously they just went back to the playoffs. So that interview did well. We did. What else did we do? Also,
I wanted to ask you that about like podcasting. Like, what do you think about the
bro? You gotta get in the camera. Lock in. Get in the camera.
My bad.
Like what? Yo, it's like I'm gonna keep that part. Though. I'm gonna keep that part. Amateurs.
You discussed like where you kind of recognize that this could actually be a thing for you, right? Like this could actually be something that you can depend your livelihood on. Once it started gaining traction, once you started having certain guests on, once it started getting picked up by certain enterprises and you began your traveling and whatnot, right? So you were kind of confident in where it was, not content, but you were happy where it was progressing to. So my question for you is, from my standpoint, from your standpoint, you've seen the increase in just the number of podcasts, and then you mentioned Varsity, you mentioned I'm Athlete and Pivot, so specifically athlete focused podcasts. So where are you at in terms of you're thinking of like, this can be my livelihood, I can depend on this, I can go earn a decent living, right? Because there's the extremes of the Joe Rogans making, damn near hundreds of $1 million, but then there's, again, it's a very concentrated pack at the bottom and middle. So, how are you feeling as far as taking Varsity House Podcast to the next level? What's next for it? And how are you going to maximize your traction?
I feel like for me, the reason why I wanted to start a podcast was initially just to tell stories, because I felt like throughout my college, journey, for people who don't know, I had 3 significant season-ending injuries, 2 ACLs and an Achilles. And the first time that I've ever talked about it to, someone outside my circle was on a podcast. It was called Stronger Scars. Shout out to Bailey Cartwright. She offered me the opportunity to come on her podcast and talk about it. And I was like, I ignored her. I ignored her for like months because I was like, I'm not comfortable talking about it. I don't want to talk about it. And so I ended up like, something happened and I was just like, all right, you know what? I'm going to go in there and talk about it. And so once I did that, it was like, I felt like I've always had a passion and, wanting to know other people's stories, because I feel like some may be similar to mine, some may be completely different than mine. But we all have a story that's, that should be told, and that's, that people want to hear. And at the end of the day, that was like the goal for it, was to be able to sit down with people, get their stories and then be able to share their stories. And, hopefully it touches one person. Hopefully it impacts one person. That's always the goal. And, obviously you want to make money, while you're doing it. The goal is to always, to be able to make money doing your passion. And so over just, this year, we've been able to, collect some steam, collect some money just through YouTube views, donations, and all that other stuff. Donations, through all that stuff. But we've had a few sponsors too. So what we want to do is continue to gain more traction, gain more views, subscribers, and like bring in and reach out to more sponsors. Mogul, like a company like Mogul, like they deal with athletes. We would love for them to sponsor the podcast. And just other businesses, other companies that that feels like it fits their target audience. We would love for them to sponsor it. So, we're going to keep doing what we're doing and reach out to those people. But I didn't start Varsity House just to, create a podcast. It was like, I just want to create a podcast. I'm going to call it Varsity House. And, I'm going to be the next Joe Rogan. I would love to be the next Joe Rogan, but that wasn't the goal. My whole goal was, I was thinking like 5 years down the line. And I was looking at, a bunch of different companies. And I was like, a company that I looked at obviously was Barstool. Looked at Nelk, companies like that have brands. Like Lyrical Lemonade is another one. And so looking at those companies, it was like, okay, they're brands, but like, how did they get started? Like everyone got started somewhere. and then they branched out. They added another arm to the business. And so I looked at Barstool specifically because I was like, they're in the podcast space. They do merch. They do live events. They do, activations. They got, all these schools, universities or whatever. And so I was thinking about, okay, cool. Like, let me do a podcast to start it off. Let me gain a community. Let people build a track. Like let people build, confidence within the brand, within me. But then also like, let's get the name out there. Let people hear Varsity House. Let's let it be something. And so that's what we did this year. That's what I wanted to do this year. We've attempted to just do like small merch, things like that, but like nothing too big. And now that I feel like I have the podcast under control, something that I want to do now is, a big thing that I base Varsity House off of is sports and community, or whoever the guest and community, and trying to bring those two together. And so this year we're looking at doing some meet and greets, whether, with some athletes, meaning we'll do some signings, we'll do some photos, and, at these events, we'll pay the players to come out. We'll have fans come out. We'll have, different news networks or whatever come out. They'll get, autographs. They'll get photos, like fun type of things. There'll be games and all that stuff. But at the end of it, we'll talk for 15, 20 minutes on, let's use Cleveland, for example, the Browns, to where it's like, why'd you choose Cleveland, or how's Cleveland treating you? What's the fan base like? Expectations for the season. So it's like bringing this exclusive community like type environment, to the people. And that's one thing that we're looking to do. And, obviously if those do well, gain traction, and continue to do more of those. So where it's like maybe a player from the Seahawks or something sees what we do and he likes it, to where it's like, okay, now we can put on an event for them. So starting to do like more activations, things like that, bring in, my network of athletes and guests and that we've had on, and allowing them to be in front of the community, be in front of the fans, and bring a way of, doing that. But then also merch, I think, could be cool. Like we've done several collabs already. Our biggest one was the Brian Kelly one. And that was just a great opportunity. Like, came up with the design. My boy, designed it. We did, the Brian Kelly beat, like Burger King t-shirt, and it was right before the Alabama game. So we sold those, and it was like, okay, cool. Like, this could be something that, like, if we have a podcast with a guest, we can drop a collab with them. And then we could go that route. So I do want merch being part of it someday, but, and then also the biggest thing I think this summer is what we're really focusing on is like a Varsity House summer camp. And so I don't want to give too much game away, but basically, if you are listening, reach out and see if find ways that you could definitely help us, whether it's donations, sponsors, donations, sponsors. So find ways to help us that way, because the goal for that is, for example, we've had 4 Cleveland Browns players on. If we had a summer camp, we have it in Cleveland, and we'd have, kids come out, and I would have like the 4 Browns players that we had on as camp counselors. And so again, community and, guests, tying those two together, and then also having the mayor come out and say a few words to the kids at the end, just because he's been a part of the podcast. So figuring out things like that to where we can get the community involved. We can obviously, bring in sponsorship dollars, bring in revenue to the business that way. Donations. Exactly. See, now you're getting it. So bring in revenue dollars that way, and continue to build the community, because I feel like the brands that I named, like Lyrical Lemonade, Barstool, Nelk, their communities are strong, and their following is strong, to where it's like they can put out anything, they'll watch it. And so I think with the podcast is cool, because now we got an outlet to share stories. But then I want to touch on, merch. I want to touch on activations. I want to touch on camps. I want to touch on, live podcasts, campus tours, whatever, all under the Varsity House umbrella, because it's like, that's what we are. We're a house, and what's a house? It's filled with people. It's filled with love. It's filled with community. It's filled with ideas, creative ideas, creation, things like that. So that's like the plan. And I believe that it's going to work, because I've seen last year, a few weeks, or, last year before we started the podcast, I feel like I've played the podcast over and over in my head, and I was like, I'm going to do it. I did not think we would get, Andre Drummond. I didn't think we'd get Darius Garland. I didn't think we'd get Ryan Clark. I didn't think we'd get Manti Te'o. Like, these are all people that, like, I could reach out to somehow, but did I think I was going to get them on? No, but I knew I was going to do a podcast, and I was just going, like, each week just try to stack up and get somebody on. So, through fate, through, being featured on Undisputed, being featured on ESPN, being featured on Sports Illustrated, Boardroom, all these other things, it allowed me to gain confidence in myself, but also allowed viewers and, all that stuff, the Varsity House, to gain credibility. And so now I don't feel comfortable reaching out to anybody, but, the podcast is what we have, is what we're going to continue to do. We're going to continue to share stories. We're going to continue to provide insight into, the people's lives that we may cheer for or anything like that. But now we definitely want to get in the community, and I want to take the relationships and the network that I have, and I want to put them in front of the everyday fan, the everyday people, and allow them just to connect the same way I connected. Oh my goodness, bro. That's where we're going, though. That's where Varsity House is going. So, if
Don't include that shit.
I think, what was I going to say? But, at the end of the day, I feel like at the end of the day, I'm still just
trudging away.
I'm still learning. And, what was it? I'm just hacking away, bro. I'm throwing stuff at the wall and see what stick, honestly, because I'm a person of many ideas, and I just feel like there's not really, a company or a brand out there that's, trying to do what I'm doing. There's a ton of podcasts, and I think podcasts are great because it's an outlet for, let's just talk about athletes specifically, but it's an outlet for an athlete to get their own voice out, to get their own story out. And do I ever think it's going to be too many podcasts? No, because I don't think there's like too many musicians. There's not too many artists. Now, obviously, some are big, some are, well known, like a Drake and Joe Rogan. Like, there's that type of people, but there's also artists, local artists, or indie artists, whereas that, like, many people might not know, but they have
Yeah.
So that's the kind of way that I view it, to where it's like, the more people, because at the end of the day, you're gonna go after your audience, you're gonna go after your niche. And so that's something that, like, what I'm trying to do is, obviously the goal is to crush the sports, to take that audience, but then also, once we have that, kind of grow into more, different industries, whether it's influencers, whether it's agents, like you talked about, whether it's, politicians, like things like that. Like, I don't want there to be a limit on who we could, have on. But right now we definitely focusing on, sports. But again, if, the governor of Ohio or the governor of whatever, somebody.
Shoot for the stars, my brother. Shoot for the stars.
Exactly. So that's where we're at right now. Like, it's crazy. I feel like 1 year flew by. I'm excited to, drop this episode, because this is the first time that people are hearing, like, why I started Varsity House and where I want Varsity House to go. And this is just the first time that I actually get to, like, just, like, not ask questions. So, and I put that on you. So, and I think you're doing a great job. Obviously, you don't do this, all the time. So I think you're doing a great job. And people, to look up Mogul, MOGL, and check it out. So thank you, Brandon. But
no, thank you, man. I don't know if there's anything else that you wanted to get off your chest as far as Varsity House and what to look forward to. I think the merch, I think the summer camp, but what should the people expect?
Yeah, I don't know. You have to be a part of, all of it. Obviously,
how do they keep in touch? Right, like what are they following?
Yeah.
Like, drops, whatever.
Follow Varsity House Podcast on all platforms. It's YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. I don't have link. Just follow me on LinkedIn, Shaun Crawford. But I post about it all the time. That's the only thing I post about. And then, just subscribe. Check us out. If you go to our Hoobie page, link in the bio of the Instagram, Twitter, we got a donations tab in there too. So, if you're feeling generous, we got like $2, $5, but the custom, you could donate what you want. Donations. So it's nah. I mean, it's like we've talked about, like going from being an athlete and being like having that be what I do, and like kind of what like my followers or what people kind of know me as, and then now transitioning to still being involved in sports, and now people recognizing the podcast. I think it brings like pure joy to me for sure. And so now I'm excited to continue and to see what we could offer, and like see a year from now, like, are people talking about the camps? Are people talking about the live events? Are people talking about the merch? Like, we gonna see. I think they will be, but we gonna definitely see, and I'm excited for that.
You've been going on for a year. Yeah, man. So you've been doing this for about a year now.
Keep going. Sorry, people. Difficulties. He's not a professional. He needs to lock in.
All right, man. But you've been doing this for about a year. You've had some phenomenal guests. You've had some phenomenal coverage, right? Some of the entities and production companies that you've mentioned, Boardroom, ESPN, First Take, you name it. You've had some success. I guess the thing I would like to understand, and for the audience, is can you name 3 to 5 of the biggest accomplishments, whether that be guest appearances, production coverage, or the number of subscribers, right? The benchmark or landmark that you've hit, right? I would love to hear from your point of view what have been some measures of success.
Bet.
Dope.
Well, first off, honestly, it's just being able just to stay, so far self-funded to the point to where, and that's not something that I would necessarily, want to continue.
No, you need some cash injection, right?
Listen, I'm gonna get there. And it's not like I'm not saying you got to invest, but you could definitely, we definitely looking for a sponsor. Mogul, I've asked Brandon's, co-founder of Mogul. I've asked Mogul to sponsor a couple episodes, but you know how it goes. So if out there, if you're listening, sponsors, if you got a company, you got a brand, and you want us to, show it out, things like that.
Be self-funded, but we don't really want to be self-funded.
We don't want to be. But that's an accomplishment to where it's like, absolutely. So far, like we've been able just to, whether it be stuff, money that I already had, or just like donations from fans or anything like that. It's been great. Like views on YouTube, all that stuff has been helping for sure. But it's just like I want to take time to appreciate like I put a lot into it, and so far I like where it is. But for it to continue to grow and for it to continue to just progress, some sponsorships, it'll definitely be great. But I won't count that one. I just wanted to get that out there. But but some big things, man, is the opportunity of experience, bro. When I first started, I was just like, I'm gonna just do these episodes. We're gonna upload it. We won't even need to edit it that much. We're just gonna get it out. And boy, was I wrong. Like it took us like, and it was just me and my brother when we first started. It took us like a week and a half to edit the first two episodes before we could even drop them. So, and now we got it down to a process where it's like 2 days, 3 days max, and we can put it out. But that was one thing, just like being able just to take the bumps and bruises and learn on the fly, honestly, and understand like, and I feel like I'm a perfectionist, but it's just to understand like it's gonna get there. Just the more you put into it, the more you pour into it, the more you learn, it's gonna get better. And I feel like it's has. So I would say that's definitely an accomplishment. It's just like for me personally, it's just to not give up, just to keep going. Even when we first started, things didn't look like the audio was, kind of off. Video wasn't that clear, but people stuck with us. They gave us time to grow, and hopefully they continue to still give us time to grow. But I would say guess. I don't want to like downplay any guests, because I've been fortunate enough for to have some great guests and people just to take time out of their day to help me out. But yeah, I could say like some episodes that was like I'll say this, like I would have never thought I would have done an interview or a podcast with the mayor of Cleveland. And so we had him on, Justin Bibb, Mayor Justin Bibb. We had him on, and so to me, to be, he's an African American. For me to be, to be an African American and young in the city, for me it was like, if I got this interview, it would have been maybe because I played a sport and he wanted to interview me, or maybe I was a big time whatever, and it was like that would have been a way to get that interview. But for me to like get the interview early on in year one, and for him to take his time out, I don't want to downplay that either. For him to take his time out and give back to the community and give back to me, like really spoke volume. Because then I was like, there's not a person that I probably can't get.
Right.
And so that episode was dope. Obviously, Darius Garland was really dope. I think that was the one that like put us on like, well, actually, I don't know, like JOK or Woo, what we call them, Greg Newsome, like Nick Chubb. All those episodes were great because it built
like you gotta let people know.
My Cleveland follower, my name was Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, linebacker for the Cleveland Browns, played at Notre Dame as well. That was my first. That episode, I'll say that episode was big because that was my first professional episode with pro athletes.
Oh, no,
and
okay.
And that was my first one that was like shot in a studio, like shot in a real studio. Like we paid for the the videographer, editor, all that stuff. That was like the first one that we really like did it big on, and it was a good thing that we did because we had great conversations. And then that one was featured on Undisputed, but we weren't sourced on it. So it's like that was like a big accomplishment, but it was like I was mad, so I had to like I DM like Shannon Sharp, DM Skip Bayless, like emailed the agents, I emailed Fox Sports, I emailed everyone, and I was like DM'd everyone. I was, and they didn't get back to me, of course, but I was just like, yo, like, dope, thanks for, talking about it, but like I would love to be sourced any type of way, whatever. And the way I found out about it was, the topic was OBJ and Baker Mayfield. So the way I found out about it was like 2 days after we dropped the podcast, Skip tweets the topics of like live during the show. And so he's like, up next we're talking Odell Beckham and Baker Mayfield from Cleveland Browns teammates. So I'm like, bet. I turn on the TV. I go turn on the TV. I'm like, all right, bet. Like we here, we good. I get, yeah. I'm like, I'm running to the TV at this point. I'm like, oh, bet, we good. So I turn on the TV and they bring up the topic and they quote it, but they don't like source it. So I'm just like, bruh. So, cause like, I'm like, cool. And then like, maybe people could have like Googled it or, you went on YouTube and found the topic, but I was kind of salty there. But, but that gave me confidence. I want to say 2 months in to where it was like, okay, we got something. Like we don't have the stars or like this, the star host or I'm a star myself, but we don't we don't have like, the big following. We don't have the network or we don't have all that stuff behind us, but it's like we're getting featured on we're getting featured on Undisputed, Fox Sports, and this was like 2 months in, and there was, way more growth to happen. But that was like a sign to me. So I'll take that as an accomplishment because it gave me more confidence in like what I was doing, to where it was like, okay, bet, like what now the goal is to be sourced, is to be big enough to where it's like you have to source us. And then I would probably just say the last, there's so many accomplishments that we have, but like the last one maybe would be like people coming up to me about the podcast. There's like, if I'm out or like in Cleveland or somewhere, and it's like, usually people come up to me like, oh, I remember you from football. I remember you played for Notre Dame. You did this, whatever. I love Notre Dame. And I'm like, that's cool. But like now, but that's in the past. So it's like, dang, like, how somebody bring up the past to you is like,
that ego thing is crazy.
You know what I mean? But like when someone bring up the past to you, it's like, dang, like that's cool. Like
I'm still holding on to, I was a quarterback at Notre Dame.
Oh, what? I literally like hold on to like the Raiders. Like I'd be like, yeah, I was on the Raiders and whatever. But
yeah.
Like I'm gonna hold on like for the rest of my life. Like my kids not gonna know like how many plays I had, how many minutes I had, but they gonna know. So and I hope every pitch that I give to somebody, I was a captain at Notre Dame. You know, like I'm throwing that out there for sure.
Anytime you're 1 year deep into any new passion project, building of some sort, there's always going to be learning curves, right? It's inevitable. This is a new field of play for you, right? Like it's been sports, it's been academia, it's been other things, but never podcasting, never this type of communication. So what's kind of been the biggest learning curve for you, whether it be from technical, the technical side of things, whether it be from understanding your guests and your people on the podcast, or even some of the travel that you had to go through, right, and endure, right? I guess speak to some of the biggest learning curves and what you've had to go through.
Well, before we get in, I got to tell the audience this is Brandon Wimbush, former quarterback at Notre Dame, current co-founder of Mogul, but also I've known Brandon since I was 17 probably. At the Under Armour All-American game, we first met. I think we also went to the opening, but we were also freshman roommates at Notre Dame, and obviously still, close friends, best friends to this day. So for this 1 year, I wanted to reach out to someone who has known me, through the ups and downs, who has, been there along the journey, and I felt that Brandon, was the guy. He probably didn't feel Let's clap it up. Brandon tried to get out of it, but I had to force him to do it. But I'm excited.
I'm honored, man. We're rolling right into it, and I'm honored to be that person for you. Excited about what you've accomplished over year one. Some of the guests that you've had, man. You've leveraged your network. You're better than me at asking for favors.
I'm trying to get you to leverage your network, but. It is, and I'll touch on that point because you talked about learning curves, and that was one of the biggest ones. Honestly, was just humbling like myself to ask someone else for a favor or to ask someone else for an interview because growing up as an athlete, as a 4-star, 5-star athlete, being an Under Armour All-American, being an open invite, going to Notre Dame, like doing all these things, I was never the one asking someone else to interview them or asking someone else for a favor, to take time out of their day to do something for me. And so at first it was that was the biggest thing. And I remember it was probably a week, last year we dropped our first episode April 12th, 2022. So it was probably a month before that we started recording it, but it honestly took me like 3 days to find the spirit to just ask. I think the first person I asked was Coach Freeman, then I asked Coach Lee, then Coach Kelly, and so I was So I didn't even
landed all three of them.
I landed all three, so I didn't play for Coach Freeman, but I just figured let me go at this angle of like. Actually, I asked Coach Lee first because I felt like Coach Lee was going to say yes, just because
he's the most personable.
Yeah,
right? Before knowing Freeman,
right. So I asked Coach Lee first, and then he said yes, and so I was like, all right, cool. I'm gonna use Coach Lee to leverage the other ones, and so I hit up Coach Freeman, and I was like, hey, this is something that I'm starting. I'm starting a podcast, and I would love to interview you, with Myron and Avery. That was our first episode that we did. And he ended up saying yes. He was like, let's do it. And he was like, does like Thursday work for you or something? And like at this time, it was like Monday. So I'm like, yeah, it works. And it was actually good that he said it like that just because I didn't have time to like back out. It was like, I got put on this schedule, it was something we had to do. And it was like, all right, this is what I'm doing. And so whether it was going to be good or bad, it was like, we're going to try it out. And so he said yes. I called Beth actually.
Who's Coach Lee, by the way, right? For the audience, who's Coach Lee?
Coach Lee's the head coach of Vanderbilt football. And then Marcus Freeman's head coach of Notre Dame. And then Brian Kelly's the head coach of LSU. So I called Beth, and I just basically explained to Beth, like, that this is what I'm doing. Like, I would love to, if you could help me out, just please. I didn't even ask. And so she's like, let me call you back. Coach is calling me. And it just happened to be calling her, I guess. And so she asked him for me, actually. So I didn't even get to ask like Beth, like, yo, like, could you please, ask Coach Kelly for me if he'll do this? But she was just like, so I got back on the phone with her and I was like, hey, like, when you talk to him again, could you ask him if he'll do this? She was like, don't even worry, I already asked him. He said, of course he'll do it. So I was like, that the one I was like most nervous about, I didn't even have to ask. I just look, he had to show up. But and if there's any technical difficulties, it's on me because I forgot. I was so geeked. I was so excited to talk to y'all about the 1 year, and I forgot to hit record on my computer. But we got the recording on my camera. So if it looks a little funky or if it sounds a little different, whatever, like bear with us. We gonna get it. We gonna get it right. Year 2 ain't gonna be like that. We're gonna have it all set. So we ain't that year 2 yet. We ain't that year 2 yet. But that's why I said donations. But anyway.
Donations.
But if there was any difficulties, that's on me. Like I said, I forgot to hit the record button, but I think we're good either way. Or I'll just bring them back and we'll just redo it again. But again, I appreciate everyone so far. I appreciate everyone's support so far. Who have been supporting Varsity House Podcast this year and, in whole. And I just want you all to continue to support, subscribe, Varsity House Podcast. Shaun Crawford 22. Give me some follows. Hey, so Brandon Wimbush, I don't really know his Instagram name, but again, thank you for, coming on here and helping me out. There's bigger and better in store, and just continue to just tune in weekly. We got more episodes coming. We got more episodes already recorded, so we're ready to drop those, ready to get those out to you. Peace, love, and podcast.